When I saw my daughter-in-law Cassandra's number flash across my phone screen that Tuesday morning, I never imagined it would be the beginning of the most devastating battle of my 68-year life. Little did she know, the sweet grandmother she was. Trying to manipulate had spent 40 years building a real estate empire worth over $12 million, and I was about to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. I was sitting in my sunroom, enjoying my morning coffee and watching the hummingbirds at my feeder when the call came. The house was quiet. Too quiet, really, ever since my husband Harold passed away 2 years ago. These days, the only sounds that filled the old Victorian were the grandfather clock in the hallway and the occasional creak of settling wood. "Hello? Cassandra?" I answered, already sensing something was off. She never called unless she needed something. "We need to talk, Beatrice," she said, her voice carrying that edge of authority she'd developed since marrying my son Marcus 5 years ago. "It's about the children." My heart immediately clenched. Emma was 7 now, with Harold's bright blue eyes and my stubborn streak. Little Jasper had just turned 4, still young enough to run to me with scraped knees and requests for my famous chocolate chip cookies. They were the light of my life, especially since Harold's passing. "What about them?" I asked, setting down my coffee cup with a trembling hand. "They won't be visiting you anymore," Cassandra announced, as casually as if she were discussing the weather. "Not until certain arrangements are made." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean? What arrangements?" "Oh, don't pretend you don't know what this is about," she replied, and I could practically hear her smirking through the phone. "Your house, Beatrice. That massive Victorian mansion you're rattling around in all by yourself. It's time to make some practical decisions." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. "I don't understand what my house has to do with seeing my grandchildren." "Everything," Cassandra said sharply. "Marcus and I have been discussing this for months. We're struggling to make ends meet in that tiny apartment while you sit alone. In a house worth over $1 million. It's selfish, really." The accusation stung because it was so unfair. I'd offered to help them financially countless times, but Marcus, my proud, stubborn son, had always refused. He insisted on making his own way, even when it meant cramming his growing family into a 2-bedroom apartment across town. "I've offered to help you and Marcus before," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You know that." "We don't want your charity," Cassandra snapped. "We want what's rightfully ours. That house should belong to Marcus anyway. You're getting older, Beatrice. Living alone in that big place isn't safe. What if you fall? What if something happens?" I'd heard this argument before, whispered between Marcus and Cassandra when they thought I couldn't hear during family dinners. But hearing it stated so bluntly, used as leverage against my relationship with my grandchildren, made my blood boil. "So you're saying I can't see Emma and Jasper unless I sign my house over to you?" I asked, needing to hear her say it plainly. "That's exactly what I'm saying," she confirmed without hesitation. "Those children need stability, Beatrice. They need a real home, not weekend visits to their grandmother's museum. Sign the house over to Marcus and you can see them whenever you want. Refuse and, well, I think we both know how this plays out." The threat was crystal clear. As their mother, Cassandra held all the power over my access to the grandchildren. In our state, grandparents had very limited legal rights, especially when the parents were married and living together. "This is blackmail," I whispered, my voice breaking. "This is reality," she corrected coldly. "You have 48 hours to make your decision. After that, don't bother calling or showing up unannounced. I'll make sure the children understand that their grandmother chose material possessions over family." The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone in shock. The silence of the house seemed deafening now, filled with the echoes of children's laughter that might never grace these halls again. I walked through the room slowly, my fingers trailing along the banister Harold had lovingly restored, past the built-in bookshelves where Emma liked to curl up with her picture books, through the kitchen where Jasper always stood on his little stool to help me bake cookies. This wasn't just a house. It was our family's history, filled with 40 years of memories. But it was also much more than Cassandra knew. What she didn't realize, what Marcus had never bothered to ask about, was that this house was just the beginning. Over the past 4 decades, I'd quietly built a real estate portfolio that would make most investors weep with envy. The sweet, accommodating mother-in-law she thought she could manipulate owned 17 rental properties, 3 commercial buildings, and had enough liquid assets to buy her precious apartment building twice over. I'd learned early in my marriage to Harold that financial independence was crucial. While he worked his 9-to-5 job at the insurance company, I studied real estate, law, obtained my license, and began purchasing undervalued properties. By the time Harold retired, we were millionaires several times over, though we lived modestly and never flaunted our wealth. Marcus knew we were comfortable, but he had no idea of the true extent of our holdings. I'd kept it that way intentionally, wanting him to develop his own work ethic and not rely on family money. Harold had agreed with this approach, believing it would make Marcus stronger and more self-reliant. Now, sitting in my quiet house with Cassandra's ultimatum ringing in my ears, I realized our discretion had backfired spectacularly. My phone rang again, and I saw Marcus's name on the display. My heart leaped with hope. Perhaps he didn't know about Cassandra's call. Perhaps he would be appalled by her behavior. "Mom?" His voice was tentative, guilty. "Marcus," I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "I just spoke with Cassandra." There was a long pause. "She told me she was going to call you." "Mom, we need to talk about this rationally." The hope in my chest crumbled to dust. He knew. He was part of this. "Rationally?" I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You think it's rational to use my grandchildren as pawns to steal my house?" "It's not stealing," Marcus said defensively. "You're my mother. Eventually, everything will come to me anyway. We're just asking you to do it now, when it can actually help us." "Help you? I've offered to help you countless times. You've always refused." "We don't want handouts," he said, echoing his wife's earlier words. "We want security. We want to own something, to build equity instead of throwing money away on rent. That house is too big for you anyway, Mom. Be practical." Practical. As if there was anything practical about extorting an elderly woman. "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus sighed heavily. "Cassandra's right about one thing. The kids need stability. If you can't see past your attachment to material things to help provide that stability, then maybe some distance would be good for everyone." The betrayal cut deeper than I'd thought possible. This was my son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose college tuition I'd paid without question, the man I'd supported through his career changes, his marriage, the birth of his children. "I see," I said quietly. "Well, Marcus, you and Cassandra have made your position very clear. I suppose I need to consider my options." "Mom, it doesn't have to be like this. Just sign the papers and everything can go back to normal. You can even stay in the house if you want. We'd never kick you out. We just need the security of ownership." The condescension in his voice was unbearable, as if he were doing me a favor by allowing me to remain in my own home as their guest. "I'll be in touch," I said, and ended the call before he could respond. The house felt different now, tainted by their greed and manipulation. I walked to Harold's old office, where his desk still sat exactly as he'd left it, and pulled out my phone to make a call. "Morrison Real Estate Group, this is Janet speaking." "Janet, it's Beatrice Holloway. I need to speak with David Morrison immediately. Tell him it's urgent." David had been my business partner and real estate attorney for over 20 years. If anyone could help me navigate this nightmare, it was him. While I waited for David to call back, I made myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat down at Harold's desk. I pulled out a legal pad and began making lists. My properties, their values, my liquid assets, my options. By the time David called back 15 minutes later, I had the beginnings of a plan. "Beatrice, what's this urgent matter Janet mentioned?" His voice was warm with concern. "Are you all right?" "I'm being blackmailed by my own family," I said without preamble, "and I need your help to fight back." I explained the situation to David, who listened with growing outrage. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Jesus, Beatrice, I'm so sorry. What do you want to do?" "I want to teach them a lesson they'll never forget," I said, my voice hard, with determination. "How quickly can we move on the Riverside property development?" The Riverside property was a large plot of land I'd been holding for years, waiting for the right opportunity. Recently, the city had approved a major development project that would turn the area into a luxury shopping and residential complex. My 20-acre plot was right in the middle of the planned development, making it worth far more than anyone realized. "We could have the sale finalized within a week if you're serious," David said slowly. "But Beatrice, that's going to be worth at least $8 million once the development breaks ground. Are you sure you want to liquidate now?" "Positive," I said. "And I want you to prepare some other documents as well. I'm about to show my dear daughter-in-law exactly who she's been threatening. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you." David arrived at my house within an hour, his leather briefcase in hand and concern etched across his weathered face. I'd known him since he was a young associate, fresh out of law school and hungry to prove himself. Now, at 55, he was one of the most respected real estate attorneys in the state, and more importantly, one of my closest friends. "Show me everything," he said, settling into Harold's old leather chair across from the desk. I spread out my handwritten notes, watching. His eyebrows climb higher with each page. The full scope of my holdings always surprised people, even those who'd worked with me for years. 17 rental properties generating steady monthly income, 3 commercial buildings with long-term corporate leases. The Riverside development, land that was about to make me obscenely wealthy. And that was just the beginning. "Beatrice," David said slowly, "your net worth is approaching $15 million. Your son has no idea, does he?" "None whatsoever." I picked up Harold's favorite pen, a Mont Blanc he'd treasured for 20 years. "We raised Marcus to be self-reliant. Perhaps we were too successful." David leaned back, his fingers steepled. "So what's the plan? You could simply buy them a house, end this whole thing?" "Absolutely not." The words came out sharper than I intended. "This isn't about money, David. This is about using my grandchildren as weapons. About threatening to rip them from my life because they think I'm a helpless old woman with nothing. But this house. And you want to prove them wrong? I want to destroy them." The venom in my own voice surprised me. "Legally, of course. But I want them to understand exactly what they've lost by trying to manipulate me." David nodded slowly. "What did you have in mind?" I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where Emma and Jasper had played just last weekend. The memory of Jasper's giggles as he chased butterflies made my chest ache. The Riverside sale, I want it completed immediately. $8 million cash, deposited into a new account they can't trace to me. Then I want you to set up a trust. What kind of trust? I turned back to face him, my mind crystallizing around the plan that had been forming since Cassandra's call. A education trust for Emma and Jasper, $50,000 each per year from age 18 until they complete their education. But there's a catch. David pulled out his legal pad, scribbling notes. "I'm listening." "The trust becomes null and void if their parents ever prevent me from seeing them without just cause. Every threat, every manipulation, every attempt to use those children as leverage will cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars in their children's future." That's brilliant, actually, and perfectly legal. What else? I want to buy their apartment building. David's pen stopped moving. Come again? Marcus mentioned they're throwing money away on rent. Well, I'm going to become their landlord. I'll buy the building, improve the property values, and then, well, let's see how they like dealing with a landlord who knows exactly what they're capable of. Beatrice, that's going to cost you at least $2 million for a building in that area. I'll have $8 million from the Riverside sale. Money isn't the issue. I sat back down, feeling more energized than I had in months. I want them to understand that their helpless grandmother isn't as powerless as they assumed. David was quiet for a long moment, then smiled. You know what? They messed with the wrong woman. I'll start the paperwork immediately. After David left, I found myself pacing through the house, my mind racing with possibilities. The grandfather clock chimed 3 o'clock, reminding me that Emma would be getting out of school soon. Usually, I'd be expecting a call asking if she could come over for cookies and homework help. Today, my phone remained silent. I decided to drive past Marcus's apartment just to see if I could catch a glimpse of the children. I knew it was pathetic, but the silence in my house was becoming unbearable. The apartment complex was a tired-looking place with peeling paint and a broken playground. I parked across the street, feeling like a stalker, but unable to help myself. 20 minutes later, I saw Marcus's car pull into the parking lot. Emma burst out of the back seat, her pink backpack bouncing as she ran toward the building. Jasper followed more slowly, clutching a stuffed dinosaur I'd bought him for his birthday. My heart clenched as I watched them disappear through the front door. They had no idea their grandmother was being erased from their lives over real estate. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Stop driving by our home. The children saw you and it upset them. This behavior needs to stop immediately. Cassandra. The lie hit me like a slap. I'd been careful to park where the children couldn't see me, and they'd been laughing and playing when they went inside. But somehow, Cassandra had spotted me. I typed back. I was in the neighborhood. I have every right to drive on public streets. Her response came immediately. You have no rights where my children are concerned. Stay away or I'll get a restraining order. A restraining order. The threat was probably empty. She'd have to prove I was actually harassing them. But the fact that she'd even suggest it showed how far she was willing to go. I drove home with tears streaming down my face, but by the time I pulled into my driveway, the tears had transformed into cold determination. The next morning, David called with an update. The Riverside sale is moving faster than expected. The buyers are motivated, and we should have everything finalized by Friday. I've also identified the apartment building where Marcus lives. It's owned by a company called Sunset Properties, and they've been looking to sell for months. Perfect. Make an offer. Beatrice, are you sure about this? Once you buy that building, you'll be their landlord. Every interaction will be complicated. Good, I said. I want them to know that actions have consequences. There's something else. I did some research on your daughter-in-law. She's been posting on social media about her difficult mother-in-law who refuses to help the family. She's painting quite a picture of you as a selfish old woman hoarding wealth while her grandchildren suffer. My blood boiled. She's doing what? Facebook posts, Instagram stories. She's building a narrative that you're the villain in this situation. I took screenshots in case we need them later. Send them to me. An hour later, I was staring at my phone in disbelief. Cassandra had posted a long, emotional message about how some grandparents claim to love their grandchildren, but refuse to make sacrifices to help them thrive. She talked about the struggle of raising children in a tiny apartment while certain family members lived in mansions they don't need. She never mentioned me by name, but the implications were clear to anyone who knew our situation. The post had dozens of comments from her friends, all expressing sympathy and outrage at the selfish grandmother. One comment made my hands shake. Maybe it's better for the kids to not be around that kind of toxic energy anyway. Cassandra had loved that comment. I set the phone down and walked to my kitchen, where a batch of Emma's favorite snickerdoodle cookies sat cooling on the counter. I'd made them out of habit, forgetting for a moment that she wouldn't be coming over to eat them. The doorbell rang, and, for a wild moment, I thought it might be the children. Instead, I found my neighbor Margaret on the front porch, holding a casserole dish and wearing a concerned expression. "Beatrice, honey, I heard about the trouble with Marcus and his wife. I thought you might need some company." Margaret was 72, a widow like me, and one of the few people who knew the real story behind my comfortable lifestyle. She'd been Harold's secretary for 15 years before he retired, and she'd helped me manage my first rental properties. "Come in," I said, grateful for the company. I could use a friend right now. We sat in my kitchen, sharing the casserole and talking about the situation. Margaret listened without judgment, occasionally shaking her head in disgust. "That woman has no idea who she's messing with," Margaret said finally. "Remember when you bought the Morrison building? The sellers thought they were taking advantage of some sweet old lady, and you ended up negotiating them down by $200,000. I managed a weak smile at the memory. "This feels different, Margaret. This is family." "Family that's using children as weapons," she replied firmly. "You've spent 40 years building something remarkable, Beatrice. Don't let them guilt you into giving it away." After Margaret left, I called David again. "I want to accelerate everything. The building purchase, the trust setup, all of it. And I want to add one more element to our plan." "What's that?" "I want to make a very public donation to the children's school. A new playground, perhaps. Something that will get attention." "Why?" "Because I want the community to see exactly what kind of grandmother I really am. If Cassandra wants to play the social media game, I'll show her how it's really done." David chuckled. "You're really going nuclear, aren't you? They declared war when they threatened to take my grandchildren away. I'm just fighting back with the weapons I have." Friday afternoon, David called with the news I'd been waiting for. "The Riverside sale is complete. $8.2 million deposited into your new account. The apartment building deal is moving forward. We should close next week. And I have drafted the trust documents." "Excellent. Schedule a meeting with the school principal for Monday morning. I want to discuss my donation in person." That evening, I sat in Harold's office, looking at bank statements that showed more money than most people would see in a lifetime. Harold and I had built this wealth together through decades of careful planning and hard work. We'd dreamed of leaving it all to Marcus and his children, ensuring they'd never have to worry about money. Instead, our son was trying to steal from me, and our daughter-in-law was turning my grandchildren into weapons. I picked up my phone and scrolled through Cassandra's social media posts again. In the latest one, she'd shared a photo of Emma and Jasper eating generic cereal with the caption, "When you're doing your best, but some people won't help family in need. Blessed cha family doc struggle." The manipulation was so blatant it made me sick. But it also strengthened my resolve. I opened a new text message and typed carefully, "Cassandra, I've given your ultimatum careful consideration. I'll have an answer for you by Monday. We should meet in person to discuss the details." Her response came within minutes. "Finally, I knew you'd see reason. We can meet at the house Sunday afternoon. Marcus and I will bring the paperwork." Paperwork. They already had documents prepared to steal my home. I set the phone aside and walked through my house one more time, touching the banister Harold had restored, looking at the family photos that lined the hallway. In every picture with the grandchildren, I was smiling, my arms wrapped around Emma and Jasper, my face glowing with love. Sunday afternoon, I would face my son and daughter-in-law for what might be the last time as a family. But I wouldn't be the helpless old woman they expected. I would be Beatrice Holloway, real estate mogul, and they were about to learn exactly what they'd lost by trying to manipulate me. Sunday afternoon arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I'd spent the morning at church, sitting in the same pew Harold and I had shared for 30 years, praying for wisdom and strength. The pastor's sermon about forgiveness felt like salt in an open wound. Some betrayals, I thought, didn't deserve forgiveness until justice was served. I dressed carefully for the confrontation, a simple navy dress with pearl earrings, the picture of a respectable grandmother. But in my purse were documents that would shatter their world, bank statements showing my true net worth, the completed trust paperwork for Emma and Jasper, and the purchase agreement for their apartment building that David had expedited through his connections. At exactly 2 o'clock, Marcus's car pulled into my driveway. Through the window, I watched him and Cassandra walk to my front door, both carrying folders thick with paperwork. Cassandra wore a satisfied smile that made my stomach turn. I opened the door before they could knock. "Hello, Marcus." "Cassandra." I stepped aside to let them in, noting how Cassandra's eyes immediately began cataloging my antiques and artwork, probably calculating their value. "Mom, I'm glad you decided to be reasonable about this," Marcus said, kissing my cheek. The gesture felt like betrayal. "Where are Emma and Jasper?" I asked, looking past them to the empty car. "With a babysitter," Cassandra replied curtly. "This is adult business." Of course they hadn't brought the children. They were saving their weapons for later. We settled in the living room, the same space, where Emma liked to build blanket forts and Jasper practiced his somersaults on the Persian rug. The memories made my chest tight. "So," Cassandra said, opening her folder with theatrical efficiency, "we've had our attorney prepare all the necessary documents. The house transfer is straightforward. You sign it over to Marcus, and we'll handle all the legal fees. We've even included a provision allowing you to live here as long as you want." She spread the papers across my coffee table like a conquering general. "We're not monsters, Beatrice. We just want what's best for everyone." I picked up the first document, scanning the legal language that would strip away my home and hand it to them for free. "How generous of you," I said quietly. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, I know this seems sudden, but Cassandra's right. The kids need stability. They need space to grow. And you shouldn't be living alone in such a big place." "For my own safety," I said, echoing their earlier words. "Exactly." Cassandra leaned forward eagerly. "What if you fell down those stairs? What if you had a medical emergency and nobody found you for days? This way, we'll all be here to take care of you." The condescension in her voice was breathtaking. She spoke to me like I was a confused child instead of the woman who'd built a multi-million-dollar empire while she was still in diapers. "I see you've put a lot of thought into this," I said, setting the papers aside. "But before I sign anything, I have some questions." Cassandra's smile faltered slightly. "Questions?" "About your finances, actually. I'm curious about your monthly expenses." Marcus frowned. "Mom, what does that have to do with anything?" "Well, if I'm giving you a house worth over $1 million, I'd like to understand how you plan to maintain it. Property taxes alone are $15,000 a year. Insurance, utilities, maintenance, it all adds up." I watched the color drain from Cassandra's face as the reality hit her. They hadn't considered the ongoing costs of owning my home. "We'll figure it out," she said quickly. "Marcus is getting a promotion soon and I'm looking for work." "What kind of work?" I asked innocently. "Administrative assistant positions, mostly. Maybe receptionist work." I nodded thoughtfully. Administrative assistants in our city made about $30,000 a year. Marcus's current salary was maybe $50,000. Even with his theoretical promotion, they'd be looking at perhaps $70,000 in annual household income. "That should be interesting," I said. "Maintaining a Victorian mansion on $70,000 a year. Have you gotten quotes from contractors? The roof needs work, and the furnace is 20 years old." Cassandra's jaw tightened. "We'll manage." "I'm sure you will." I stood and walked to my desk, pulling out the folder David had. prepared. Actually, I have some paperwork of my own to share. I returned to the coffee table and spread out my documents. The first was a bank statement showing the $8.2 million deposit from the Riverside sale. Marcus stared at the numbers, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Mom, what? What is this? My checking account balance as of Friday afternoon. Cassandra snatched the paper, her eyes widening as she took in the number. This has to be fake. Where would you get $8 million? I sold some land. I laid out the next document, a comprehensive list of my property holdings. This is my current real estate portfolio: 17 rental properties, 3 commercial buildings, and various development projects. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus picked up paper after paper, his face growing paler with each revelation. You own the Morrison Building? He whispered. The one downtown? I've owned it for 12 years. The rent from the corporate tenants pays for both my living expenses and continued investments. Cassandra was frantically shuffling through the documents. This says you own properties worth $14 million. This can't be real. It's very real. Harold and I spent 40 years building this portfolio. We were quite successful. Marcus finally found his voice. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? All these years you let me think you were just comfortable. You never asked, I replied simply. And frankly, I wanted you to develop your own work ethic. Harold and I agreed that knowing about family wealth too early could be damaging to a young person's character. But we've been struggling. Cassandra burst out. Do you know what it's like cramming 4 people into a 2-bedroom apartment while you sit here on millions of dollars? I offered to help you many times. You refused. We wanted to earn our own way, Marcus said weakly. No, I corrected. You wanted to take my way. There's a difference. I pulled out the next set of documents, the trust paperwork for Emma and Jasper. Since you're so concerned about the children's future, I've established education trusts for both of them. $50,000 per year from age 18 until they complete their education. Graduate school included. Marcus grabbed the documents eagerly. Mom, this is incredible. Thank you, Read the fine print, I interrupted. His excitement faded as he found the relevant clause. The trust becomes void if the parents prevent the grandmother from reasonable access to the beneficiaries? That's right. Every time you use those children as weapons against me, you cost them their future. Cassandra's face was turning red. You can't buy access to our children. I'm not buying anything. I'm protecting them from parents who would use them as leverage in their greed. I pulled out the final document. Speaking of protection, I have one more surprise. The purchase agreement for their apartment building hit the table like a bomb. What is this? Marcus asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. I bought your building. Congratulations, I'm your new landlord. Cassandra jumped to her feet. You did what? The previous owners were motivated sellers. I made them an offer they couldn't refuse. The sale finalized Friday afternoon. You can't do this, Cassandra shrieked. This is harassment. This is business. I own property. You rent. It's a simple landlord-tenant relationship. Marcus was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Mom, this is insane. You can't buy our building just to spite us. I didn't buy it to spite you. I bought it because it was a good investment. In an up-and-coming neighborhood. The fact that you happen to live there is just convenient. I gathered up my documents and returned them to their folder. Now then, let's discuss your original proposition. You wanted me to sign over my house so you could see your children. Instead, I'm going to make you a counteroffer. They both stared at me, too shocked to speak. You can continue living in your apartment, my apartment, at the current rent. The children's education trusts remain in place, ensuring their future regardless of your financial decisions. and you can have unlimited access to my home for family gatherings, holidays, and weekend visits. What's the catch? Cassandra asked suspiciously. No, catch. But no more ultimatums, no more threats, and no more using Emma and Jasper as bargaining chips. I am their grandmother, and I will see them when and how I choose. And if we refuse? Marcus asked. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then you can find new housing arrangements. I'm sure there are plenty of available apartments in the city, though probably not at your current below-market rate. You can't evict us for personal reasons, Cassandra protested. I can't evict you without proper legal cause. I agreed. But I can choose not to renew your lease when it expires next month. I can also raise the rent to market value, which would be about double what you're currently paying. The weight of their situation was finally sinking in. They'd tried to manipulate a helpless old woman and instead had awakened a financial powerhouse who now controlled their housing, their children's future, and their access to generational wealth they'd never imagined existed. Mom, Marcus said, quietly, I think we need to talk about this, privately. What's to discuss? I stood and walked to the front door. You have a choice to make. Accept my terms and we move forward as a family, or continue down the path you started and face the consequences. Cassandra was gathering up their useless paperwork, her hands shaking with rage. This isn't over, Beatrice. You can't control us with money. I'm not controlling anyone. I'm simply making it clear that actions have consequences. You threatened to take my grandchildren away. Now you know what I'm capable of when threatened. They left without another word, Cassandra slamming the door, hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood in my quiet house, surrounded by the evidence of my victory, but feeling strangely empty. I'd won this battle, but at what cost? My relationship with my son might be permanently damaged, and I still hadn't seen Emma and Jasper. My phone buzzed with a text from David. How did it go? I typed back. Phase 1 complete. They know exactly who they're dealing with now. But as I looked around my empty house, I wondered if winning this war would cost me everything I'd been fighting to protect. 3 days passed in suffocating silence. No calls, no texts, no glimpse of Emma's bright smile or Jasper's infectious giggle. I found myself checking my phone obsessively, jumping at every notification, hoping against hope that Marcus would reach out. Instead, I got something much worse. Tuesday morning, while watering my roses, I noticed Margaret hurrying across her yard toward me, her face pale with worry. Beatrice, honey, you need to see this. She thrust her tablet toward me, her hands trembling slightly. On the screen was a local news website with a headline that made my blood freeze. Local woman accused of elder financial abuse in family dispute. The article was brief, but devastating. An anonymous source had contacted the news station claiming that a wealthy elderly woman was being manipulated by family members seeking to gain control of her assets. The reporter had apparently done some digging and connected the dots to our family, but the twist made my stomach drop. They'd gotten the story completely backwards. According to the article, Marcus and Cassandra were the victims. The anonymous source claimed I was suffering from early-stage dementia and making erratic financial decisions, including purchasing my son's apartment building in what appeared to be an attempt to control his family. The source suggested my children were trying to protect me from myself by seeking guardianship. This is impossible, I whispered, scrolling through the article. They're making me sound like the abuser. Margaret squeezed my shoulder. Who would do such a thing? I didn't need to guess. Cassandra's social media manipulation had been just the beginning. Now she was playing a much more dangerous game. My phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. Beatrice, please tell me you haven't seen the news yet. I'm looking at it now. David, they're claiming I have dementia. They're suggesting Marcus is trying to save me from myself. It gets worse. I just got a call from Family Services. Someone filed a report claiming you're being financially exploited and may be a danger to yourself. They want to do a wellness check. The world seemed to tilt sideways. A wellness check? Standard procedure when someone reports potential elder abuse. They'll send a social worker to assess your mental state and living situation. I sank onto my garden bench, the tablet sliding from my numb fingers. This is insane. I'm not some confused old woman being taken advantage of. I'm the one. With the business empire! I know that, and you know that. But perception is reality in these situations. If they determine you're mentally compromised, they could recommend a conservatorship. That would give Marcus legal control over your finances. The full scope of Cassandra's plan hit me like a physical blow. She couldn't steal my house directly, so she was trying to have me declared incompetent. If successful, Marcus would become my conservator, giving him exactly what they'd wanted all along: complete control over my wealth. What do I do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. First, don't panic. Second, we need documentation of your mental competency. I'm calling Dr. Reynolds to schedule a comprehensive evaluation. We'll also need character witnesses who can testify to your mental acuity. Dr. Reynolds had been my physician for 15 years. He'd know this was ridiculous. But would that be enough? David, what if they succeed? What if— They won't, he said firmly. But we need to take this seriously. No more confrontations with Marcus and Cassandra until this is resolved. Any interaction could be twisted to support their narrative. After hanging up, I sat in my garden, staring at the roses Harold had planted for our 20th anniversary. The irony was suffocating. In trying to protect myself from their manipulation, I'd given them ammunition to paint me as the manipulator. Margaret sat beside me, her expression worried. "What are you going to do?" "Fight," I said, though the word felt hollow. "But Margaret, what if I can't see Emma and Jasper until this is resolved? What if they're turning my grandchildren against me right now?" "Those babies love you, Beatrice. No one can change that." But even as she said it, I wondered if love would be enough against a sustained campaign of lies. The doorbell rang that afternoon, and I found myself face to face with a young woman in a professional pantsuit carrying a official-looking folder. "Holloway? I'm Sarah Chen from Family Protective Services. I believe you're expecting me?" I forced a smile, acutely aware that everything I said and did would be scrutinized. "Of course. Please come in." Sarah was probably in her early 30s, with kind eyes but a serious demeanor. She followed me into the living room, her gaze taking in every detail. "I want to assure you that this is just a routine wellness check," she began, settling into Harold's old chair. "We received a report expressing concern about your well-being, and we're required to follow up." "What exactly was reported?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Sarah consulted her notes. "The caller expressed concern that you might be experiencing cognitive decline and making unusual financial decisions. They mentioned you recently purchased your son's apartment building following a family dispute." "I see. And who made this report?" "I'm not able to share that information, but I can tell you it came from someone claiming to be concerned about your welfare." Of course they couldn't tell me, but I knew. For the next hour, Sarah asked probing questions about my daily routine, my financial management, my relationships with family members. I answered carefully, aware that casual responses could be misinterpreted. "Mrs. Holloway, can you tell me about your decision to purchase your son's apartment building?" This was the crucial moment. It was a sound investment opportunity. The building was undervalued, and I saw potential for appreciation. The fact that my son happens to live there was coincidental. "But you made this purchase shortly after a family disagreement about your housing situation?" "The timing was coincidental," I repeated, though I could hear how weak it sounded. Sarah made notes, her expression neutral. "I'd like to take a look around your home, if that's all right, just to assess your living situation." We toured the house, Sarah noting the cleanliness, the well-maintained condition, the organized nature of my belongings. In Harold's office, She paused at the desk where financial documents were neatly filed. "You manage your own finances?" she asked. "With the help of my attorney and financial advisor, yes. I've been doing so for 40 years. That's quite impressive for someone your age." The comment stung, though I'm sure she didn't mean it to. At 68, I was hardly ancient, but in her world, perhaps I was. After Sarah left, I called David immediately. "How did it go?" he asked. Hard to tell. She was professional, thorough. But David, what if this is just the beginning? What if they're building a case? Then we build a better defense. I've scheduled your appointment with Dr. Reynolds for tomorrow. Morning, I'm also contacting Patricia Morrison from your investment club and James Sullivan. We need people who can testify to your mental sharpness and business acumen. That evening, I sat in my empty house, surrounded by 40 years of memories and achievements, feeling more alone than I had since Harold's death. The grandfather clock chimed 8 o'clock, usually bedtime story time when the children visited. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Grandma B? It's Emma. Mommy let me use her phone. I miss you. When can I come make cookies?" Heart nearly burst. I started typing a response, then stopped. Was this really Emma? Or was it Cassandra setting some kind of trap? The paranoia of the situation was making me question everything. I decided to risk it. "I miss you too, sweetheart. Very much. I hope to see you soon." The response came quickly. "Mommy says you're sick and need help. Are you okay?" There it was. They were already poisoning her mind against me, making me the problem instead of themselves. "I'm fine, Emma. Just some grown-up confusion that will be sorted out soon." "I love you, Grandma B. I love you too, more than all the stars in the sky." After that, the number went silent. I stared at the phone, wondering if I'd just made things worse by responding. The next morning, Dr. Reynolds confirmed what I already knew. My cognitive function was completely normal for my age. Better than normal, actually. "Beatrice, you're sharper than most people half your age," he said, signing the evaluation forms. "Anyone suggesting you're experiencing dementia is either lying or doesn't know you at all." But when I got home, David was waiting with news that made my blood run cold. "They've escalated," he said grimly. "Marcus filed a petition for emergency conservatorship this morning. The hearing is scheduled for Friday." Emergency conservatorship? It means they're claiming you're in immediate danger and need protection. If the judge grants it, Marcus would have temporary control over your finances until a full hearing can be held. I sank into my chair, the weight of their betrayal crushing. My own son is trying to have me declared incompetent. We'll fight. This, Beatrice. But I have to warn you, these cases can get ugly. They'll likely try to present evidence of erratic behavior, questionable financial decisions, anything that supports their narrative. What kind of evidence could they possibly have? David's expression darkened. "The apartment building purchase will be Exhibit A. They'll frame it as an elderly woman making vindictive financial decisions due to cognitive decline. But you have all the documentation showing it was a sound investment. Logic doesn't always win in family court, especially when emotions are running high." That afternoon, alone in my house, I made a decision that would change everything. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus's number. He answered on the third ring. "Mom? Marcus, we need to talk. Just you and me. No lawyers, no Cassandra. One conversation. Before this gets any uglier." There was a long pause. "I don't think that's a good idea. Your father would be ashamed of what you're doing to me." The words hit their mark. I heard his sharp intake of breath. "Mom, we're trying to help you. You're not thinking clearly." "Then prove it," I said. "Meet me at Dad's grave tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. If you truly believe I'm losing my mind, look me in the eye at your father's graveside and tell me so." Another long pause. "Okay, but Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be." After I hung up, I realized I was gambling everything on one final conversation. But if I couldn't reach my son, the boy I'd raised, the man Harold had been so proud of, then maybe I'd already lost the war. The question was, would the Marcus who met me tomorrow be my son or Cassandra's puppet? The cemetery was shrouded in morning mist when I arrived, the old oak trees creating shadows that danced across the headstones. Harold's grave sat on a small hill overlooking the pond where we used to bring Marcus to feed the ducks when he was Emma's age. I knelt beside the granite marker, my fingers tracing Harold's name as I had countless times over the past 2 years. "I need your help today, sweetheart," I whispered. "I need you to help me reach our son." "Mom?" I turned to see Marcus walking up the hill, his face etched with exhaustion and something else. Shame, maybe, or regret. He looked older than his 35 years, as if the weight of what he was doing had aged him overnight. "Thank you for coming," I said, rising slowly from the grass. He stopped a few feet away, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. For a moment, we just stood there in the morning stillness, two people who had once shared everything now feeling like strangers. "You look tired," I said gently. "I haven't been sleeping well." His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Neither have I." I gestured to the bench Harold and I had donated to the cemetery years ago. "Sit with me?" We settled, onto the wooden bench, both staring at Harold's headstone. The silence stretched between us, filled with years of unspoken words and fresh wounds. "Do you remember," I said finally, "when you were 7 and you broke Mrs. Patterson's window with your baseball?" Marcus's mouth twitched slightly. "Dad made me work all summer to pay for it. You were so angry. You said it wasn't fair, that it was an accident. It was an accident, but you still had to face the consequences." I turned to look at him. "Your father taught you that actions have consequences, whether we intend them or not." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, this is different." "Is it? You're trying to have me declared incompetent to steal my life's work. How is that different from breaking someone's window?" "We're not trying to steal anything." The words burst out of him, raw with frustration. "We're trying to protect you." "From what, Marcus? From myself? From making decisions that could hurt you?" He turned to face me, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. "Mom, you bought our apartment building out of spite. You set up trusts with conditions designed to control us. That's not normal behavior." The pain in his voice was real, and for a moment I questioned everything. Had I gone too far? Had my need to protect myself turned me into something I didn't recognize? "Marcus," I said quietly, "why didn't you ask me about my finances before assuming I was just a comfortable widow with one house?" "What do you mean? In all these years, did you ever once ask me how I was managing financially? Did you ever wonder how I maintained this house, paid for your college, helped with your wedding?" He frowned, clearly confused by the direction of the conversation. "You assumed I was living off your father's insurance and pension," I continued. "You never asked because you weren't interested. And that's fine. Children shouldn't have to worry about their parents' finances. But when you decided you wanted my house, suddenly my finances became your business. That's not fair, isn't it? Marcus, I offered to help you buy a house dozens of times over the years. You always refused, said you wanted to make your own way. I respected that. But the moment things got difficult, instead of asking for help, you decided to take what you wanted." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his father's name carved in granite. "Cassandra said you would never give us anything willingly. She said rich people only care about keeping their money. And you believed her over your own mother?" "I didn't know you were rich!" The words exploded out of him. "Jesus, Mom, $14 million? Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because money changes people, Marcus. It changes how they see you, how they treat you, what they expect from you." I reached over and took his hand, relieved when he didn't pull away. Your father and I wanted you to become the man you were meant to be, not the man who had everything handed to him. But we've been struggling for years. Emma needs her own room. Jasper needs space to play. We could have used help. You had help available. You chose pride over practicality. Marcus pulled his hand away, running it through his hair. So this is all our fault? We're the villains here? You became the villains when you threatened to take my grandchildren away to force me to give you my house. That was Cassandra's idea. The admission hung in the air between us like a confession. But you went along with it, I said gently. You called me and threatened me too. I know. His voice broke slightly. I know, and I've regretted it every day since. But Mom, Cassandra's convinced that you're losing it. The apartment building purchase, the trusts with all those conditions. She says it proves you're not thinking clearly. What do you think, Marcus? He was quiet for a long time, staring at the pond where a family of ducks glided across the still water. I think, he said finally, that I don't know who you are anymore. The words stung, but I understood them. I'm the same person I've always been. You're just seeing parts of me that I kept private. The business stuff, the investments. Did you become this person? I've always been this person, Marcus. I just never talked about it at family dinners. He laughed bitterly. So while I was complaining about my job and our cramped apartment, you were sitting there knowing you could solve all our problems with pocket change? I was sitting there hoping my son would ask for help instead of trying to steal from me. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. The harsh truth of it seemed to deflate him. His shoulders sagged, and for a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to crawl into bed with Harold and me during thunderstorms. I've made a mess of everything, haven't I? He said quietly. It's not too late to fix it. Cassandra won't. Drop the conservatorship petition. She's convinced you're dangerous, that you'll cut us off completely if we don't act now. What do you think? Marcus looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. I think you're the same woman who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with algebra and cried when I graduated college. I think you're hurt and angry, but you're not crazy. Relief flooded through me so powerfully I nearly wept. Then help me stop this. I can't control Cassandra. You can refuse to support her petition. You can tell the judge that you don't believe. I'm incompetent. She'll be furious. Marcus, whose opinion matters more to you, your wife's or your conscience? He was quiet for several minutes, and I could almost see the battle raging inside him. Finally, he spoke. If I don't support the petition, if I tell the judge I think you're competent, what happens to us? To our family? What do you want to happen? I want my kids to know their grandmother. I want to stop feeling like I'm betraying everyone I love. I want to figure out how to move forward from this mess. Then we figure it out together. But Marcus, I need to know that you're choosing our family over Cassandra's schemes. I need to know that my son is still in there somewhere. He turned to look at Harold's headstone again. What would Dad say about all this? Your father would say that family is more important than money, but that doesn't give family the right to steal from each other. He'd be disappointed in me. He'd be proud of you for recognizing your mistakes and trying to fix them. Marcus stood abruptly and walked to Harold's grave, kneeling beside the headstone. I watched as he placed his hand on the granite, his lips moving in what looked like a silent conversation with his father. When he finally returned to the bench, his face was streaked with tears. I'll call my lawyer this afternoon, he said. I'm withdrawing my support for the conservatorship petition. The relief was so overwhelming I felt dizzy. Thank you. But Mom, I need you to understand something. Cassandra's not going to give up. She's convinced this is a war, and she thinks she's fighting for our children's future. What does that mean? It means she'll find other ways to come after you. The news story was just the beginning. I can handle Cassandra. Can you? because she's already talking about taking the kids and leaving if this doesn't work. She says she won't let them be around someone she considers unstable. The threat hit me like a physical blow. Losing the conservatorship battle would be meaningless if Cassandra simply disappeared with Emma and Jasper. She can't take them away from you, Marcus. She can try. She's been documenting everything, every interaction, every decision you've made that she considers questionable. She's building a case that you're a bad influence on the children. I felt the walls closing in around me. Even with Marcus back on my side, Cassandra held the ultimate weapon, the power to take my grandchildren away completely. What are you going to do? I asked. Marcus looked at me with eyes that held both love and fear. I'm going to try to save my family, all of it. But Mom, I might not be able to save everyone. As we sat together in the shadow of Harold's grave, I realized that winning my son back was only the first battle. The war for my grandchildren was just beginning, and Cassandra was about to show me exactly how far she was willing to go to destroy me. The question was, how far was I willing to go to stop her? I should have known Cassandra wouldn't go down without a fight. What I didn't expect was how dirty she was willing to get. The call came at 6 a.m, jolting me from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. David's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Beatrice, you need to get down to the police station immediately. Don't drive yourself. I'm sending a car. What's happened? Cassandra filed a report claiming you showed up at their apartment last night, intoxicated, and making threats. She says you tried to force your way inside to see the children. The accusation hit me like ice water. That's impossible. I was home all evening. Margaret came over for dinner. She didn't leave until almost 10. I know that, and you know that. But there's security footage from their building showing someone who looks like you in the lobby around 9:30. My mind reeled. David, I was in my kitchen washing dishes at 9:30. Margaret can verify that. Good. We'll need her statement. But Beatrice, this is serious. If they can make this stick, it supports their narrative about your declining mental state. 20 minutes later, I sat in an interview room at the police station, my hands folded carefully on the metal table to hide their trembling. Detective Rodriguez, a tired-looking man in his 40s, reviewed the report with professional detachment. Mrs. Holloway, we have a complaint that you appeared at 1247 Maple Street last evening, around 9:30 p.m., demanding to see your grandchildren. The complainant states you appeared intoxicated and became belligerent when refused entry. Detective, I was home all evening. I have a witness who can confirm this. We'll need to speak with your witness. However, we also have security footage from the apartment building that shows a woman matching your description in the lobby at the time in question. David leaned forward. Detective, may we see this footage? Rodriguez turned his laptop toward us, and my heart nearly stopped. There, clear as day, was a woman who looked remarkably like me entering the apartment building. Same height, same silver. Hair, even wearing a coat similar to one I owned, but it wasn't me. Detective, I said carefully, I need you to look at something. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos Margaret had taken during our dinner. Time-stamped images of us laughing over dessert at exactly 9:28 p.m. Rodriguez frowned, comparing the timestamp on the security footage with my photos. These were taken at the same time? Within 2 minutes of each other. Detective, someone is impersonating me. The implications hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was fraud, possibly conspiracy. Mrs. Holloway, Rodriguez said slowly, do you have any idea who might want to impersonate you? Before I could answer, David's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went white. Excuse me, detective, but we have a problem. I just received an emergency motion from Cassandra's attorney. She's requesting immediate temporary custody of the children, claiming Mrs. Holloway is now a physical threat to their safety. My world tilted sideways. She can't do that. Marcus won't let her. David's expression grew grimmer. Beatrice, the motion was filed by Marcus's attorney too. They're both requesting emergency custody removal. The betrayal cut deeper than anything that had come before. After our conversation at the cemetery, after his promise to help me, Marcus had sided with his wife again. "I need to call Marcus," I said, reaching for my phone. "No." Rodriguez held up a hand. "Mrs. Holloway, until we sort this out, I'm advising you to have no contact with the family. Any communication could be seen as harassment given the current allegations." I felt trapped, suffocated by walls closing in from every direction. Someone had impersonated me to create evidence of erratic behavior. My own son had betrayed me again. And now I couldn't even defend myself without risking further accusations. "Detective," David said, "we need to examine that security footage more carefully. If someone is impersonating my client, this is a criminal matter." Rodriguez nodded. "I'll have our tech team enhance the image. In the meantime, Mrs. Holloway, I strongly advise you to stay away from your son's family until this is resolved." Driving home with David, I felt numb with shock. How is this possible? How could Marcus agree to this after our conversation yesterday? "People do desperate things when they're scared," David replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Or when they're being manipulated by someone who's willing to commit fraud to get what she wants." Back at my house, Margaret was waiting on my front porch, her face creased with worry. "Beatrice, what's going on? A police car was here earlier asking about last night." I explained everything while David took her formal statement confirming my whereabouts. As she recounted our evening together, a horrible thought began forming in my mind. "Margaret, what time did you say you left?" "Just before 10. I remember because I wanted to catch the late news." "And you walked home across the yard?" "Of course. Same as always." She paused, studying my face. "Beatrice, what are you thinking?" I was thinking that someone had been watching my house, timing my visitor's departure, knowing exactly when to make their move at the apartment building. This wasn't random. It was calculated, planned, professional. "David, I want to hire a private investigator. Someone good, someone who can dig into this impersonation." I know just the person. "But Beatrice, you need to prepare yourself for the emergency custody hearing. It's scheduled for tomorrow morning." My phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. David shook his head. "Don't answer it. Anything you say could be used against you." But I needed to hear my son's voice, needed to understand how we'd gone from reconciliation to this fresh betrayal in less than 24 hours. "Hello, Marcus. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I can't fight this anymore." His voice was thick, with tears, and I could hear Cassandra's sharp voice in the background telling him to hang up. "Marcus, listen to me. I wasn't at your apartment last night. Someone is impersonating me. The security footage is fake, or it's someone who looks like me. Marcus, I was home with Margaret all evening. We have photos. Cassandra says you're lying, that you're getting confused about time. Do you believe that? After 40 years of knowing me, do you really think I'd show up drunk at your door threatening people?" There was a long pause. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Believe your heart. You know me, Marcus. You know who I am." "I have to protect my children," he said, his voice breaking. "Even if it means protecting them from you." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling something inside me break beyond repair. My own son, the child I'd carried and raised and loved unconditionally, had just declared war on me. "That's it," I said quietly. David looked up from his notes. "That's what?" "I'm done playing defense. If Cassandra wants a war, she's going to get one." I walked to Harold's office and pulled out my laptop. Within minutes, I was on the phone with Patricia Morrison, the managing partner at Caldwell & Associates. "Patricia, I need a favor. I want to retain your firm for a case involving fraud, conspiracy, and child endangerment." "Beatrice, what's going on?" I explained the situation in clinical detail, watching Patricia's anger build with each revelation. My God, Beatrice, this woman is systematically destroying your relationship with your family. What do you want us to do? I want you to investigate her. Everything. Her background, her finances, her friends, her family. Someone helped her with this impersonation, and I want to know who. Consider it done. But Beatrice, litigation like this could take months, even years. I don't care how long it takes or how much it costs. I want to know who I'm really fighting. After hanging up with Patricia, I made one more call to my accountant. Bill, I need you to liquidate $2 million worth of investments immediately. Yes, I know there will be penalties. Just do it. David watched me with growing concern. Beatrice, what are you planning? I'm planning to win. Cassandra thinks she knows who she's dealing with, but she's about to learn that some grandmothers fight back. That evening, alone in my house, I sat in Harold's chair and opened my laptop. If Cassandra wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty, too. But I had resources she couldn't imagine and decades of experience she couldn't match. I started with her social media accounts, screenshotting every post, every comment, every photo. Then I moved to public records, property records, court, filings, employment history. What I found made my blood run cold. Cassandra hadn't just married Marcus. She'd targeted him. 3 years before they met, she'd been engaged to another man, a wealthy widower with 2 children. That engagement had ended abruptly when he discovered she'd been stealing from his business accounts. No charges were filed, but the pattern was unmistakable. She was a predator who specialized in targeting vulnerable men with money or property. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're going to lose everything, old woman. Your house, your money, and most importantly, those precious grandchildren. By the time I'm done with you, they won't even remember your name. I stared at the message, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. Cassandra had just made her first real mistake. She'd underestimated exactly who she was threatening, and now she was about to discover that some wars aren't won by the loudest combatant. They're won by the smartest one. The private investigator I hired was nothing like what I'd expected. Jake Morrison was Patricia's younger brother, a former FBI agent who looked more like a college professor than someone who tracked down criminals. But his reputation was flawless, and within 48 hours, he'd uncovered information that made my stomach turn. Mrs. Holloway, Jake said, spreading photos across my dining room table. Your daughter-in-law isn't who she claims to be. The first photo showed a woman who looked like Cassandra, but with dark hair and different clothes. This is Christina Walsh, arrested in Phoenix 3 years ago for elder fraud. Charges were dropped when the victim decided not to testify. The second photo made my hands shake. This is Catherine Williams, engaged to a wealthy businessman in Denver. The engagement ended when $50,000 went missing from his company account. How many names does she have? I whispered. At least 4 that I've found so far. She's been running this scam for years. Target vulnerable men with assets, gain their trust, then systematically drain their resources. But Marcus isn't wealthy. He doesn't have assets worth stealing. Jake's expression darkened. No, but his mother does. Mrs. Holloway, I believe your son was specifically targeted because of your wealth. Someone did research on your family before Cassandra ever met Marcus. The implications hit me like a physical blow. My son's marriage, his children, the family I'd cherished, all of it built on lies and manipulation. There's more, Jake continued. The woman who impersonated you at the apartment building. Her name is Rita Walsh, Cassandra's sister. She's been Cassandra's accomplice in at least 3 previous scams. I stared at the security footage screenshot showing the woman who looked so much like me. Now that I knew what to look for, I could see the subtle differences, the slightly different walk, the way she held her shoulders. Where is she now? Gone. Disappeared the same night as the incident. but I'm tracking her credit cards and cell phone records. David, who'd been silent through most of Jake's presentation, finally spoke. This is enough evidence to have Cassandra arrested for fraud. We can also file for emergency injunction to prevent her from taking the children out of state. What? About Marcus? I asked. He's still supporting her custody petition. Marcus doesn't know who he married, Jake said. Mrs. Holloway, your son is as much a victim here as you are. Cassandra has been manipulating him for years, probably using psychological techniques she's perfected on previous targets. The thought of my son as a victim rather than a co-conspirator changed everything. Marcus wasn't betraying me. He was being controlled by a professional manipulator. I need to warn him, I said, reaching for my phone. No. David's voice was firm. If you contact Marcus directly, Cassandra will know we're onto her. She could disappear with the children before we can stop her. Then what do we do? We set a trap, Jake said with a predatory smile, and we use her own tactics against her. The plan Jake outlined was elegant in its simplicity. We would let Cassandra think she was winning while secretly gathering evidence of her fraud. The emergency custody hearing would proceed as scheduled, but we'd have surprises waiting. The key, Jake explained, is making her overconfident. Criminals like Cassandra make mistakes when they think they've already won. That afternoon, I did something that went against every instinct. I called Cassandra directly. Well, her voice dripped with false sweetness. The crazy grandmother decides to call. Cassandra, I want to make a deal. There was a pause, then suspicious interest. What kind of deal? I'll sign over the house and establish trust funds for the children with no conditions. In exchange, you drop the custody petition and let me see Emma and Jasper on weekends. I could practically hear her salivating through the phone. How much for the trust funds? $2 million each. Not enough. Make it $5 million each, plus the house, plus all your rental properties. The greed in her voice was breathtaking. She was demanding my entire fortune, exactly what Jake had predicted. That's everything I have, Cassandra. That's the point. You're too old to manage that much wealth anyway. This way, it stays in the family where it belongs. I forced myself to sound defeated. I need time to arrange the transfers. My attorney says it could take a week. You have 3 days. And Beatrice, if you try any tricks, you'll never see those grandchildren again. After hanging up, I felt sick. The casual cruelty in her voice, the practiced way she'd manipulated the conversation. This woman had done this before, probably multiple times. Jake nodded approvingly. Perfect. She thinks she's broken you. Now she'll get careless. What if she disappears with the children before we can stop her? She won't. She's too close to getting everything she wants. Greed will keep her here. The next morning brought the emergency custody hearing. I sat in the courtroom watching Marcus avoid my gaze while Cassandra played the role of concerned mother to perfection. Your Honor, her attorney began, my client is deeply concerned about the children's safety. Mrs. Holloway has exhibited increasingly erratic behavior, culminating in showing up intoxicated at their homemaking threats. Judge Williams, a stern woman in her 50s, reviewed the file with obvious skepticism. I see there's some dispute about the identity of the person in the security footage. Your Honor, David stood. We have evidence that someone impersonated Mrs. Holloway to create false evidence of erratic behavior. That's ridiculous, Cassandra's attorney scoffed. My client has documented months of concerning behavior. What followed was a parade of lies so skillfully crafted I almost admired. Their artistry. Cassandra testified about my confused phone calls, my inappropriate financial decisions, my threats against the family. She painted a picture of a mentally deteriorating woman who posed a danger to innocent children. Marcus took the stand. Reluctantly, his testimony halting and clearly coached. I love my mother, but I'm concerned about her recent behavior. The apartment building purchase seemed vindictive. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke simply and honestly about my relationship with my grandchildren, my concerns about their living situation, and my attempts to help the family. I didn't mention the fraud investigation or Cassandra's criminal history. Jake had insisted we save that ammunition. Judge Williams looked troubled as she reviewed the evidence. This is clearly a family in crisis. While I'm not entirely convinced by the impersonation theory, I'm also not prepared to remove children from their parents based on the evidence presented. My heart sank. However, the judge continued, I am ordering supervised visitation for the grandmother, 2 hours per week at a neutral location until a full custody evaluation can be completed. It wasn't what I'd hoped for, but it was something. At least, I'd still see Emma and Jasper. But as we left the courtroom, Jake pulled me aside with urgent news. Mrs. Holloway, we have a problem. My contact at the phone company just confirmed that Cassandra made a call to a travel agent yesterday. She's booked flights to Mexico for tomorrow morning. She's running? She got spooked by the impersonation questions. She's going to take the children and disappear. My blood ran cold. Can we stop her? Not legally. She's their mother, and Mexico doesn't have an extradition treaty for custodial interference. Then we stop her illegally. David grabbed my arm. Beatrice, you can't be serious. But I was deadly serious. I'd spent weeks playing by rules while Cassandra committed fraud, perjury, and child endangerment. No more. Jake, where are they going to be tonight? According to my surveillance, they're staying at a hotel near the airport. Room 412. I looked at both men, my decision crystallizing. I'm going to get my grandchildren. Mrs. Holloway, Jake said carefully, what you're suggesting could land you in prison. Then I guess I better not get caught. That evening, I sat in my car across from the airport hotel, watching the fourth-floor windows. Somewhere up there were Emma and Jasper, probably confused and frightened, not understanding why their world was being turned upside down. I thought about Harold, about what he would say if he were here. Would he tell me to follow the law and hope for the best? Or would he understand that sometimes protecting family requires breaking rules? My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Those babies need their grandmother. I smiled despite everything. Margaret knew me too well. At 11 p.m., when the hotel lobby was nearly empty, I walked through the front doors like I belonged there. I'd spent 40 years managing rental properties. I knew hotels, their security systems, their staff patterns. Also knew that sometimes the most dangerous battles are fought not with weapons or lawyers, but with a grandmother's love and a lifetime of accumulated wisdom. Cassandra was about to learn that some people don't stay down when you knock them over. They get back up and they fight for what matters most. The hotel elevator climbed to the 4th floor with agonizing slowness. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched the numbers change. 2, 3, 4. When the door slid open, I stepped into a carpeted hallway that smelled of industrial cleaner and other people's secrets. Room 412 was at the far end of the corridor. I walked slowly, my mind racing through possibilities. What if Marcus answered the door? What if the children were already asleep? What if I was making the biggest mistake of my life? But as I raised my hand to knock, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Emma's voice, high and frightened, crying for her daddy. I want to go home, she sobbed. I don't want to go on the airplane. Cassandra's voice cut through the door like a blade. Stop being a baby, Emma. We're going on an adventure. I want Grandma B. Jasper's smaller voice joined in. Where's Grandma B? Grandma B is sick, Cassandra snapped. She can't take care of you anymore. That's why we're leaving. Something inside me snapped. I pounded on the door with both fists. Open this door, Cassandra. The voices inside went silent. Then I heard Marcus, confused and sleepy. Who is that? Nobody, Cassandra hissed. It's just the neighbors complaining about noise. Daddy, that's Grandma. Emma's voice rose in excitement. Heard scuffling, then Marcus's voice getting closer to the door. "Mom? Is that you?" Marcus opened the door. "We need to talk." "Don't you dare." Cassandra's voice was sharp with panic. "She's having another episode. She followed us here." But the deadbolt turned, and suddenly I was face to face with my son. He looked terrible, exhausted, confused, like a man who'd been sleepwalking through his own life. Behind him, I could see Emma and Jasper on one of the beds, still in their pajamas, their little faces streaked with tears. Suitcases were packed and stacked by the window. "Grandma B!" Emma scrambled off the bed and ran toward me, but Cassandra caught her arm. "Get back on the bed, Emma." Now, the coldness in her voice when she spoke to my granddaughter made my hands clench into fists. "Marcus," I said quietly, "do you know your wife has booked flights to Mexico for tomorrow morning?" His face went blank with confusion. "What?" "No. We're just... She said we needed a few days away from everything." "A few days?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the flight confirmation Jake had sent me. "This is a one-way ticket, Marcus. She's planning to disappear with your children." "That's ridiculous," Cassandra said, but her voice was too high, too defensive. "Show him the return flights." Marcus looked at her expectantly. When she didn't respond, understanding began to dawn in his eyes. "Cassandra, where are the return tickets?" "We'll buy them later, when things calm down." "What things? What needs to calm down?" I stepped into the room and Cassandra backed away from me like I was dangerous. Good. Maybe I was. "Marcus, your wife isn't who she claims to be. Her real name is Christina Walsh, and she's wanted for fraud in 3 states." "That's insane!" Cassandra shrieked. "She's having delusions. Can't you see she's lost her mind?" But Marcus was staring at his wife with growing horror. "Is it true?" "Of course it's not true. She's trying to destroy our family." "Then prove it," I said quietly. "Show him your driver's license, your social security card, your birth certificate." Cassandra's face went white. "I don't have to prove anything to her." "You have to prove it to me," Marcus said, and his voice was different now, harder, more awake than I'd heard it in years. "Cassandra, show me your ID." I left my purse in the car." "No, you didn't." He pointed to her purse sitting on the dresser. "It's right there." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Emma and Jasper watched with wide, frightened eyes, sensing the adult tension even if they couldn't understand it. Finally, Cassandra made a choice that revealed everything about who she really was. Instead of continuing to lie or trying to explain, she lunged for her purse and pulled out a small canister. "Stay back," she screamed, pointing what I now recognized as pepper spray at Marcus. "All of you, stay back." Marcus stepped protectively in front of the children. "Cassandra, what are you doing?" "What I should have done months ago. I'm taking what I deserve and getting out of here." She grabbed Emma's arm roughly, pulling her toward the door. My granddaughter cried out in pain and fear. "Let go of her," I said, and my voice carried 40 years of authority, of dealing with difficult tenants and dishonest contractors and anyone who thought they could intimidate me. "Or what, old woman? You'll call the police? They already think you're crazy." "No," I said calmly, pulling out my own phone. "I'll call Jake Morrison, the private investigator who's been tracking your sister Rita. The one who has photos of you in Phoenix, Denver, and Tucson. The one who knows about Christina Walsh and Catherine Williams and all the other names you've used." For the first time since I'd known her, Cassandra looked genuinely afraid. "That's impossible. Rita disappeared after she impersonated me at your apartment building, but she made a mistake. She used her credit card at a gas station 20 miles away. Jake's been following her electronic trail for days." Marcus's face had gone ashen. "Cassandra, what is she talking about?" But Cassandra wasn't listening to him anymore. She was calculating, her eyes darting between the door, the window, and the pepper spray in her hand. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, her voice taking on the cold, professional tone I'd heard her use on the phone with lawyers. "I'm walking out of here with Emma. You try to stop me, and I spray everyone in this room, including the kids." "You wouldn't hurt the children," Marcus said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. "Wouldn't I?" "Marcus, you sweet, stupid man. I've been playing you for 5 years. Do you really think I care about your brats?" The casual cruelty of calling Emma and Jasper brats seemed to wake something in Marcus. He stepped forward, no longer the confused, manipulated man I'd been watching for months. "Let go of my daughter. Or what? You'll divorce me? Take the kids?" "With what money, Marcus? You can't even afford a decent apartment without Mommy's help." "Actually," I said quietly, "he can." Both of them turned to look at me. The education trusts I set up for Emma and Jasper? I also established one for Marcus. $2 million available immediately upon dissolution of his marriage to you. Marcus stared at me in shock. "Mom, you never said—" "I never said a lot of things, but I'm saying them now." I looked directly at Cassandra. "You chose the wrong family to target. We protect each other." Cassandra's grip on Emma loosened slightly as the implications hit her. If Marcus divorced her, he'd be financially independent. Her meal ticket would disappear. That moment of distraction was all Marcus needed. He moved faster than I'd seen him move since high school football, grabbing Cassandra's wrist and twisting until she dropped the pepper spray. "Get away from my children," he said, and for the first time in years, I heard Harold's strength in his voice. Cassandra staggered backward, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking completely. "This isn't over," she snarled. "I'll destroy all of you. I'll make sure those kids never see you again. No," I said simply. "You won't." I pressed a button on my phone, and Jake's voice came through the speaker. "Did you get all that?" "Every word," he replied. "The police are on their way up." Cassandra's face went through a series of expressions: rage, fear, calculation, and finally, a cold acceptance that chilled me to the bone. "You think you've won?" she said quietly. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." But as the sirens grew, louder in the distance, and my grandchildren ran into my arms, I realized something important. I didn't care what she was capable of anymore. I only cared about what I was capable of. And I was capable of anything when it came to protecting my family. The next few hours passed in a blur of police interviews, flashing lights, and my grandchildren clinging to me like I might disappear again. Emma sat on my lap in the hotel lobby while Jasper pressed against my side, both of them still in their pajamas, both of them safe. Marcus sat across from us, his head in his hands as the full scope of his wife's deception unfolded. Detective Rodriguez read from a thick file that Jake had compiled. Christina Walsh, also known as Catherine Williams, Cassandra Matthews, and at least 6 other aliases, wanted for elder fraud in Arizona, embezzlement in Colorado, and identity theft in Nevada. 5 years, Marcus whispered. I was married to her for 5 years. How did I not see it? Because she's a professional, Jake explained gently. These people are experts at finding vulnerable targets and exploiting their emotional needs. You weren't stupid, Marcus. You were grieving your father and looking for stability for your family. I watched my son struggle with the realization that his entire adult life had been built on lies. The woman he'd loved, the mother of his children, had been using him from the very beginning. The children, Marcus said suddenly, looking up with panic in his eyes. Are they even, legally? They're yours, Detective Rodriguez assured him. DNA doesn't lie, and we found the original birth certificates in her bag. She kept them as insurance, probably. Relief flooded Marcus's face, and I felt a weight lift from my chest that I hadn't even realized was there. What happens now? I asked. Well, Mrs. Holloway, We'll need formal statements from all of you. Cassandra, is being charged with multiple felonies, including fraud, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping. She's not getting bail. And her sister? Rita Walsh was picked up this morning trying to cross the border into Canada. She'll be extradited back here to face charges for the impersonation. As the police finished their paperwork and the hotel staff cleaned up the chaos, I found myself alone with Marcus for the first time since this nightmare began. Mom, he started, then stopped, shaking his head. I don't even know where to begin. Apologizing. You don't apologize for being manipulated by an expert, Marcus. You apologize for the choices you made along the way. He was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma and Jasper sleep on the lobby couch, finally peaceful after hours of confusion and fear. I almost lost them, he said quietly. I almost let her take them to Mexico because I was too proud to see what was happening. But you didn't. When it mattered most, you protected them. Only because you saved us all. He looked at me with eyes that reminded me of the little boy who used to run to me when he had nightmares. The trust fund you mentioned. Is that real? Very real. Though there are conditions. His shoulders tensed. What conditions? I smiled, remembering how terrified he'd been of my conditions just days ago. Family dinner every Sunday. No exceptions unless someone's in the hospital. Marcus laughed, a broken sound that was half relief and half hysteria. That's it? That's it. Though I reserve the right to add cookie baking sessions with the grandchildren and mandatory attendance at school plays. Deal, he said without hesitation. Then, more seriously, Mom, what you did tonight, coming to that hotel room, facing her down, that was incredibly dangerous. I'm their grandmother. Dangerous comes with the territory. She could have hurt you, hurt the kids, but she didn't. And now she can't hurt anyone ever again. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching our children sleep. Emma was curled against Jasper like a protective big sister, even in sleep. I need to find us a new place to live, Marcus said eventually. I can't go back to that apartment knowing she chose it, planned all of this there. Actually, I have a suggestion about that. Marcus looked at me warily. Mom, if you're going to offer to let us move in with you, I'm not. You're adults. You need your own space. But I do own a house about 10 minutes from mine. 3 bedrooms, big backyard, completely renovated last year. The tenants just moved out. I can't afford the trust fund I mentioned. It comes with a housing allowance, enough to cover mortgage payments on a very nice house. Marcus stared at me. You bought us a house? I bought an investment property that happens to be perfect for a family with 2 young children and a father who needs to rebuild his life. Mom, I can't let you— Marcus. I reached over and took his hand. For 40 years, your father and I built something bigger than ourselves. We did it so that our family would always be secure, always be protected. Let us protect you. Tears started down his cheeks. I'm so sorry. For all of it. For not seeing what she was, for threatening you, for almost losing the kids. You're my son. You'll always be my son, no matter what mistakes you make. That's what family means. 3 months later, I stood in the kitchen of Marcus's new house, teaching Emma how to measure flour for chocolate chip cookies, while Jasper helped by eating the chocolate chips. Grandma B, Emma said seriously, her small hands covered in flour. Are you going to live with us forever now? No, sweetheart. I have my own house, remember? But I'll visit lots, and you can visit me lots too. Good, she said firmly, because I missed you when that bad lady said we couldn't see you. My heart still clenched when the children mentioned Cassandra, though their therapist said they were adjusting well. Children, she'd explained, were remarkably resilient when surrounded by love and consistency. Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway, home from his new job at a financial planning firm. a career change that suited him much better than his previous work. "How are my favorite bakers doing?" he asked, kissing Emma's flowery forehead. "Daddy, Grandma B says we can make cookies every Sunday." "Every Sunday? That's a lot of cookies." "Family tradition," I said, winking at him. "Your father and I started it when you were Emma's age." As evening fell, we sat around Marcus's new dining room table. Him, me, Emma, and Jasper, sharing dinner and planning the weekend. It was perfectly ordinary and absolutely precious. Later, after I'd tucked the children into their beds and read them their favorite story, Marcus walked me to my car. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Did you really have all those contingency plans, or were you making some of it up as you went along?" I smiled, remembering the terror and determination of those dark weeks. "What do you think?" "I think you're the most devious, brilliant, terrifying grandmother those kids could ever ask for." "Good. They'll need that as they grow up." As I drove home through the quiet streets of our neighborhood, I thought about Harold and how proud he would be of the family we'd protected together. The house he'd loved was still mine, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with the promise of Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings, and all the ordinary miracles that make a family whole. Cassandra had tried to destroy us by exploiting our love for each other. Instead, she'd taught us that love was the strongest weapon we possessed, and sometimes when you're fighting for family, that's all you need. 6 weeks after Cassandra's arrest, I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was having coffee with Margaret, both of us laughing over Emma's latest artwork, a crayon drawing of our family that included what she called the monster lady in jail clothes. David's voice on the phone was tight with barely controlled panic. "Beatrice, we have a serious problem. Cassandra made bail." The coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against my kitchen floor. "That's impossible." Detective Rodriguez said she was being held without bail. Her family posted it. Apparently, she comes from money, real money. Her father is some kind of tech mogul who's been estranged from her for years, but family lawyers can work miracles when they want to. Margaret was already reaching for paper towels, but I waved her away. The broken cup seemed insignificant compared to the shattered safety I'd thought we'd rebuilt. "Where is she now?" "Unknown. She was released yesterday afternoon and hasn't checked. In with her bail supervisor. There's a warrant out for her arrest, but Beatrice—" David paused. "There's more." Of course there was more. There was always more with Cassandra. "The house Marcus and the children are living in? Someone broke in last night. Nothing was stolen, but the place was thoroughly searched. Professional job. They knew exactly what they were looking for." My blood went cold. "The children?" "They weren't there. Marcus took them to stay with a friend after he found the break-in. But Beatrice, whoever did this, wasn't looking for valuables. They went through files, computers, personal documents." I sank into Harold's old chair, my mind racing. She's looking for something. What could she possibly want? The criminal case against her is solid. The children are safe. Her assets are frozen. But I knew Cassandra better now. She wasn't just a common criminal. She was a strategist who always had backup plans. And she'd spent 5 years in my son's life, learning everything about our family. "David, I need you to check something. Harold's safe deposit box. Does Marcus have access to it?" "I'd have to check the paperwork, but I believe so." "Why?" "Because Cassandra would have known about it. She probably convinced Marcus to tell her everything about family finances during their marriage. Harold had kept important documents in that safe deposit box. Birth certificates, insurance policies, and something else that made my stomach twist with fear. "David, there's a life insurance policy on me in that box. $2 million with Marcus as the beneficiary." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Beatrice," David said slowly, "you think she's planning to—" "I think she's planning to cut her losses and cash out. With me dead and Marcus inheriting, She could manipulate him into giving her the money in exchange for disappearing. That's insane. Marcus spent 5 years being manipulated by her. She knows exactly which buttons to push. I stood up, pacing to the window. And if something happened to me under suspicious circumstances right after she made bail, who would be the prime suspect? Marcus would be, David finished grimly, the son who stands to inherit millions. Exactly. She destroys our family one more time and walks away rich. Margaret had been listening to my side of the conversation with growing alarm. Beatrice, you need to call the police immediately. And tell them what? That I have a feeling my daughter-in-law might try to kill me? They'll say I'm being paranoid. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Some lessons are taught through loss. You took everything from me. Now you'll understand how that feels. I showed the message to Margaret, whose face went white. That's it, she said, grabbing her purse. You're staying at my house tonight. We're calling the police, and you're not going anywhere alone until this woman is back in custody. But even as I agreed to Margaret's plan, I knew Cassandra was too smart to make a direct move against me. She'd proven herself capable of elaborate schemes and long-term planning. Whatever she was planning would be subtle, untraceable, and devastating. That afternoon, I sat in David's office while he made call after call, trying to locate Cassandra and coordinate with law enforcement. The more we learned, the more frightening the picture became. She's not working alone, Jake Morrison reported via speakerphone. My sources say her father hired a high-end criminal defense team, but more concerning, there are rumors about private security contractors being involved. What kind of contractors? The kind that make problems disappear, permanently. David leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. So we're dealing with someone who has money, connections, and no moral boundaries. It gets worse. I've been tracking her known associates, and 3 of them have been spotted in the city in the past 48 hours, including someone who goes by the Cleaner. I didn't need Jake to explain what that meant. What about Marcus and the children? They're safe for now. I've got a security team watching them, but Beatrice, this is bigger than local law enforcement. Can handle. We need federal intervention. On what grounds? Interstate fraud, conspiracy, and now credible threats against a witness. I'm reaching out to my contacts at the FBI. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. Mom, where are you? I'm at David's office. Marcus, you and the children need to stay exactly where you are until... Mom, listen to me. His voice was strange, tight with controlled fear. Someone's been calling Emma's school, asking about her schedule. They claim to be from the district office, but when the principal called to verify, there was no record of the inquiry. My heart stopped. Marcus, get the children and go to the police station. Right now. We're already here. But Mom, there's something else. I got a call this morning from someone claiming to be Cassandra's lawyer. He said she wants to meet with me to work out a peaceful resolution. Please tell me you said no. Of course I said no. But Mom, he knew things about our family that only Cassandra would know. Private things. He mentioned the life insurance, policy on you, the trust funds, even Harold's collection of vintage coins. David and Jake exchanged grim looks. Marcus, listen to me very carefully. Don't trust anyone you don't know personally. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't let the children out of your sight. How long can we live like this, Mom? Emma's asking why she can't go to school, why we can't go home. What am I supposed to tell her? The pain in his voice broke my heart. My son was trying to protect his children while living in fear, and it was all because of choices I'd made to fight back against Cassandra. Tell her the truth, that sometimes adults make bad choices, and other adults have to work very hard to keep everyone safe. After ending the call, I sat in David's office feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on me. My fight with Cassandra had escalated beyond anything I'd imagined, And now my entire family was in danger. "There's something else we need to discuss," David said quietly. "The other families Cassandra victimized, Jake's investigation has turned up at least 8 other cases across multiple states. She's left a trail of financial ruin and broken families. What does that have to do with us?" 2 of her previous victims died under suspicious circumstances after she was exposed. One in a car accident, another from what appeared to be a heart attack brought on by stress. The room went cold. "Are you saying she's killed before?" "I'm saying that when Cassandra's schemes are threatened, very bad things happen to the people who threaten them." Jake's voice came through the speaker again. "Beatrice, there's something else. I've been monitoring social media and news reports. Cassandra's father is claiming that his daughter is being framed by a vindictive ex-mother-in-law who's suffering from dementia." "He's what?" "He's launching a public relations campaign, painting you as the real villain. Wealthy widow with mental health issues targeting her innocent daughter-in-law. It's the same narrative Cassandra tried to use, but now it's being pushed by professional publicists and lawyers." I felt the walls closing in from every direction. Not only was Cassandra free and planning something terrible, but she was simultaneously destroying my reputation and credibility. "This is checkmate," I whispered. But David shook his head. "No, Beatrice. This is her biggest mistake yet." "How do you figure that?" "Because she's fighting you on your own turf now. Public relations, financial manipulation, legal maneuvering. These are all things you've been doing successfully for 40 years. He pulled out a thick folder I hadn't noticed before. Jake's investigation didn't just uncover Cassandra's crimes, it uncovered her father's business practices. Turns out the tech mogul has some very questionable offshore accounts and a history of tax evasion. So we're about to turn the hunter into the hunted. If Cassandra wants to play games with family money and public perception, she's about to learn that some grandmothers have been playing that game a lot longer than she has. David's smile was sharp as a blade. Time to show her what a real professional looks like. What followed was 48 hours of the most intense strategic warfare I'd ever engaged in, and I'd been buying and selling real estate for 4 decades. David's plan was elegant and ruthless. While Cassandra's father spent money trying to destroy my reputation, we quietly fed information about his offshore accounts to investigative journalists at 3 major newspapers. While Cassandra's expensive lawyers filed motions claiming I was an unstable elderly woman, we provided the FBI with evidence of her family's tax evasion spanning 2 decades. But Cassandra wasn't sitting idle either. Thursday morning, I woke up to find my front yard filled with news vans. Someone had leaked the story to the media, and not the version that painted Cassandra as the villain. "Local business owner accused of elder abuse by desperate family," read the headline on Channel 7's morning show. The story featured an interview with a woman claiming to be a former employee of mine who described me as increasingly paranoid and vindictive toward family members. I'd never seen the woman before in my life. "They're creating witnesses," Jake explained when I called him in a panic. "Classic disinformation campaign. For every fake witness they produce, we'll need 3 real ones to counter the narrative." Margaret stood at my kitchen window, peering through the curtains at the reporters. Camped on my lawn. "Beatrice, you can't stay here. This is becoming a circus." She was right, but I refused to be driven from my own home by lies and manipulation. Instead, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I walked outside and held an impromptu press conference on my front porch. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, standing in the same spot where Emma had helped me plant tulips just last spring. "My name is Beatrice Holloway, and I'd like to set the record straight." The reporters surged forward, cameras rolling, microphones thrust in my direction. For the past several months, my family has been the victim of an elaborate fraud perpetrated by my former daughter-in-law, who is currently a fugitive from justice. Rather than respond to your questions individually, I'm going to show you exactly who you're dealing with. I pulled out my phone and projected Jake's investigation files onto my laptop, which David held up for the cameras. This is Christina Walsh, arrested in Phoenix for elder fraud. This is Catherine Williams, wanted in Denver for embezzlement. This is the same woman who married my son under false pretenses and attempted to kidnap my grandchildren. A reporter from Channel 4 pushed forward. Mrs. Holloway, your daughter-in-law's family claims you're suffering from dementia and making false accusations. How do you respond to that? I respond with documentation. I handed her copies of my recent medical evaluations, my business licenses, and my corporate tax returns. I'm a successful businesswoman who built a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio over 4 decades. Do these look like the actions of someone with dementia? Another reporter called out, "What about the allegations that you bought your son's apartment building to control his family?" I bought an undervalued property that represented a sound investment. The fact that my son happened to be a tenant was coincidental. I smiled coldly. Though I admit, becoming his landlord did give me certain advantages when his criminal wife tried to flee the country with my grandchildren. The questions kept coming, but I had answers for all of them. 40 years of business dealings had taught me to keep meticulous records, and Harold had always insisted on documentation for everything. As the impromptu press conference wound down, I made one final statement that would be replayed on news channels for days. I want to be very clear about something. I am not a victim in this story. I am a grandmother who discovered that someone was threatening my family, and I responded accordingly. If that makes me intimidating to criminals, so be it. The footage went viral within hours. Social media exploded with commentary, but for the first time, the narrative was shifting in my favor. Grandma Warrior began trending, and suddenly I was receiving messages of support from strangers around the world, but Cassandra's response was swift and vicious. That evening, as I sat in my living room reviewing legal documents with David, my phone rang. It was Marcus, and his voice was shaking with terror. "Mom, they took Emma." The world stopped spinning. "What do you mean they took her?" "She was at the playground at the safe house." I turned around for literally 30 seconds to help Jasper tie his shoe, and when I looked back, she was gone. There was a woman talking to her by the gate. Blonde, sunglasses, looked like a teacher or social worker. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Marcus, call 911 right now. Alert the FBI agents who are supposed to be protecting you." I already did. They're setting up roadblocks. "But Mom..." His voice broke. "She's only 7 years old." David was already on his other phone, coordinating with law enforcement. Through my terror, I heard fragments of conversation. "Amber Alert. Federal kidnapping charges. Interstate transportation." My phone buzzed with a text from the same unknown number that had threatened me before. "The playground at Riverside. Park. Come alone or you'll never see your granddaughter again." "David," I said quietly, "I have to go." "Absolutely not. Beatrice, this is exactly what she wants. She's trying to isolate you. She has Emma. And if you go to that meeting, she'll have you both." But I was already moving toward the door. "Then you better make sure the cavalry isn't far behind." Riverside Park was the same place where Harold and I had brought Marcus to play when he was Emma's age. The irony wasn't lost on me. Cassandra had chosen a location filled with happy family, memories for what might be our family's destruction. I arrived at the playground as the sun was setting, casting long shadows through the trees. The park was empty except for a lone figure sitting on a bench near the swings. Emma. She was sitting quietly, her little hands folded in her lap, but I could see her shoulders shaking even from a distance. As I got closer, I realized why she wasn't running to me. Cassandra stepped out from behind a large oak tree, and I saw the thin wire in her hand, connected to something small and electronic attached to Emma's backpack. "Hello, Beatrice. Thank you for coming." "Let her go, Cassandra." This is between you and me. Oh, but it's not, is it? This has always been about family, about control, about showing everyone who really has the power. Emma looked up at me with tear-streaked cheeks. Grandma B, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. It's going to be okay. Actually, Cassandra said conversationally, it's not going to be okay at all. You see, this little device I'm holding is connected to a very special backpack that Emma is wearing. If I press this button, or if I let go of it, or if anything happens to me, well, let's just say the evening news will have quite a tragic story to report. The casual way she threatened my granddaughter's life made something dark and primal rise up in me. What do you want? I want you to transfer $50 million to an offshore account. I want signed documents giving me full custody of both children. And I want a written confession that you've been suffering from dementia and that everything that's happened has been the result of your mental deterioration. I don't have $50 million. Of course you do. Your real estate portfolio, your investments, your various business holdings. Jake Morrison's investigation was very thorough. I know exactly what you're worth. The wire in her hand gleamed in the fading light, and I could see Emma trying to be brave, trying not to cry. Even if I agreed to your terms, how do I know you won't hurt her anyway? You don't. But you know what will definitely happen if you refuse. I looked at my granddaughter, Harold's eyes in a 7-year-old face, her whole life stretching ahead, of her if I could just keep her safe. Okay, I said quietly. You win. Cassandra smiled, and for a moment she looked almost genuinely pleased. I thought you might see reason. Now I need you to call your banker and— She never finished the sentence. The sniper's bullet took her down so cleanly that Emma didn't even realize what had happened until Jake Morrison was sprinting across the playground, his team emerging from positions I hadn't even known they'd taken. Emma, sweetheart, don't move, I called out as Jake carefully examined the device on her backpack. It's a fake, he announced after a tense minute. Elaborate prop, but no actual explosives. She was bluffing. As Emma ran into my arms, and police sirens filled the air, and Cassandra lay motionless on the ground that had once echoed with children's laughter, I realized something important. Some battles end not with negotiation or compromise, but with decisive action taken by people who understand that certain lines can never be crossed. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The weeks following Cassandra's death passed in a strange blur of police interviews, legal proceedings, and therapy sessions. Emma barely spoke for the first week, clinging to me whenever I visited and waking up screaming from nightmares about the bad lady with the wire. I found myself sitting in more waiting rooms than I cared to count: child psychologists, family therapists, victim advocates. The state required extensive counseling for Emma after her kidnapping, and frankly, we all needed it. Grandma B, Emma said one afternoon as we sat in Dr. Sarah's waiting room, her small hand clutched in mine. Why did that lady want to hurt us? It was the first time she'd asked a direct question about what happened, and I chose my words carefully. Some people get very angry when they can't have what they want, sweetheart, and sometimes that anger makes them do terrible things. But we're safe now? Yes, baby, we're safe now. But even as I said it, I wondered if any of us would ever feel truly safe again. Marcus was struggling too, though he tried to hide it. The revelation that his entire marriage had been built on lies, that the mother of his children had been a professional criminal, had shaken him to his core. He'd started seeing a therapist twice a week and had taken extended leave from his new job. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, he told me one evening as we sat in his kitchen while the children played in the next room. The way she always pushed me to tell her about family finances, how she discouraged me from spending time with you, the questions she asked about your properties. Marcus, she was a professional. You weren't supposed to see through her act. But I should have protected my children better. Emma shouldn't have gone through what she went through. Emma is resilient. Children are stronger than we think. He shook his head. She draws pictures of playgrounds now, but there's always a monster hiding behind the trees. Jasper keeps asking, when Mommy is coming home, and I don't know what to tell him. That was perhaps the most heartbreaking part. At 4 years old, Jasper didn't understand why his mother had suddenly disappeared from his life. The therapist said it was normal for children his age to blame themselves, to think they'd done something wrong. We tell him the truth, in age-appropriate ways, I said gently, that sometimes adults make very bad choices, and that it's not his fault. How do I explain that his mother tried to kidnap his sister? How do I tell him that the woman who sang him lullabies was planning to— Marcus's voice broke. I reached across the table and took his hand. You don't explain it all at once. You give him time to heal, and you answer his questions honestly when he's ready to ask them. 3 weeks after the incident at the park, we had our first family dinner that felt almost normal. Emma helped me make Harold's famous spaghetti sauce while Jasper helped by standing on his stool and stirring the pot. Marcus set the table using the good china from Harold's mother, something we'd never done before. But somehow it felt important to use beautiful things while we still could. Grandma B, Emma said as we sat down to eat. Can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Were you scared when the bad lady was there? I considered lying, telling her that grown-ups don't get scared. But our family had been through too much for anything but honesty. Yes, Emma, I was very scared. I was scared something might happen to you. But you came anyway. That's what family does. We take care of each other, even when we're scared. Emma nodded solemnly, then brightened. Like how Daddy came to get us at the hotel? Exactly like that. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. And like how Grandma B fought to keep us all together from the very beginning. After dinner, as we cleaned up together, Emma asked another question that caught me off guard. Grandma B, are you rich? Marcus and I exchanged glances. Why do you ask, sweetheart? I heard Daddy talking to someone on the phone about money and houses and stuff. And the news people said you have lots of money. I knelt down to Emma's eye level. I have enough money to make sure our family is always safe and taken care of. But you know what's more important than money? What? The people who love you. Money can't buy that, and it can't replace it. Like how we love each other? Exactly like that. Later that evening, after Marcus had taken the children home, and I was alone in my house for the first time in weeks, I found myself walking through the rooms, seeing them differently. This house had been the center of Cassandra's scheme, the prize she'd tried to steal. But it was also the place where Emma learned to bake cookies, where Jasper played with his toy trains, where Marcus had grown up into the good man his father would be proud of. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was David. Beatrice, I have news about Cassandra's estate and the criminal proceedings. I'm listening. Her father has agreed to settle all outstanding claims against the family. He's established a victim compensation fund for everyone she defrauded over the years, and he's also setting up college funds for Emma and Jasper. That's unexpected. I think losing his daughter, even under these circumstances, gave him some perspective on what's really important. I was quiet for a moment, processing this news. What about the legal proceedings? With Cassandra dead, most of the criminal charges are being dropped. Rita, her sister, is cooperating fully with authorities and will likely serve minimal time in exchange for her testimony about their previous schemes. So it's really over? The legal part is over, the healing part. David paused. That's going to take longer. After hanging up, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in Harold's chair, looking out at the garden where my grandchildren had played. Just months ago, so much had changed. So much had been lost and found and nearly lost again. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. The kids want to know if they can have a sleepover at Grandma's house this weekend. Emma says she wants to make sure all the monsters are really gone. I smiled through unexpected tears as I typed back, "Tell Emma we'll check every corner together. And yes, I'd love to have you all here." A sleepover. Such a simple thing, but after everything we'd been through, it felt like a miracle. Emma was ready to be brave. Jasper missed his grandmother's house, and Marcus was learning to trust again. As I prepared for bed that night, I thought about Harold and what he would say about everything that had happened. I could almost hear his voice. "You did good, Bea. You protected our family." But I knew the real test wasn't in the dramatic confrontations or the legal victories. It would be in the quiet moments ahead, helping Emma process her nightmares, supporting Marcus as he rebuilt his life, watching Jasper grow up knowing he was safe and loved. The monsters were gone, but the real work of healing was just beginning, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I was looking forward to that work. 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen making Emma's favorite chocolate chip cookies, while Jasper helped by eating half the chocolate chips before they made it into the bowl. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the house was filled with the sounds I'd feared I might never hear again. Children's laughter, Marcus's voice calling from the living room about a football game, the ordinary chaos of family life. "Grandma Bea," Emma said, carefully measuring flour into the mixing bowl, "do you think Mommy would have liked these cookies?" The question didn't shock me anymore. Emma had been asking about Cassandra more frequently lately, and Dr. Sarah said it was a healthy part of her healing process, trying to separate the mother she remembered from the woman who had terrified her. "I think your mommy would have loved watching you make them," I said carefully. "She loved you very much, Emma, even though she made some very bad choices." Bad choices that hurt people. Yes, sweetheart. Very bad choices that hurt a lot of people. Emma nodded seriously, then brightened as Jasper managed to get chocolate chips in his mouth instead of on the floor. "But we're okay now, right?" "We're more than okay. We're family." The therapy had helped all of us, but time had been the real healer. Emma still had occasional nightmares, but they were less frequent now. Jasper had stopped asking when Mommy was coming home, though he sometimes talked about her as if she were simply away on a very long trip. Marcus had returned to work and was even dating someone, a kind, patient woman named Claire, who understood our family's complicated history. "Mom," Marcus called from the living room, "Claire's here." Claire had become a regular fixture at our Sunday dinners over the past few months. She was nothing like Cassandra. Quiet where Cassandra had been dramatic, genuine where Cassandra had been calculating. She worked as a librarian and had never once asked about our family's finances or property holdings. "Miss Claire." Emma ran into the living room, her flour-covered hands leaving prints on Claire's dark jeans. "Hey there, Cookie Monster." Claire laughed, giving Emma a hug. "How's the baking going?" "Grandma Bea is teaching me to make the recipe from when Daddy was little. The same recipe my grandmother taught me," I added, joining them in the living room. 4 generations of chocolate chip cookies," Claire smiled. "That's quite a legacy." It was, and I was grateful for legacies that had nothing to do with money or property, or the things people might try to steal. These were the inheritances that mattered: family recipes, Sunday dinners, the knowledge that no matter what happened, we would always have each other. As we sat down to dinner, Jasper climbed into his booster seat and looked around the table with satisfaction. "This is everybody," he announced. "This is everybody," Marcus agreed, and I caught the look that passed between him and Claire, a look that suggested everybody might be expanding in the future. After dinner, while the children played in the backyard and Marcus and Claire cleaned up, I found myself on the back porch, watching Emma push Jasper on the swing Harold had hung from the old oak tree years ago. "Penny for your thoughts?" Marcus asked, joining me on the porch steps. "Just thinking about how different things are from a year ago." Better different or just different? I considered the question. A year ago, I'd been a lonely widow rattling around in a big house, my relationship with my son strained, my grandchildren being used as weapons against me. Now I was surrounded by family every Sunday, the children ran freely through my house, and Marcus and I talked regularly about everything from their school performances to his hopes for the future. Better different, I said definitely. Much better? Even with everything we went through? The fear, the legal battles, the trauma? Especially because of what we went through. It showed us what really matters. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching his children play. I've been thinking about something lately. What's that? About how you fought for us. Even when I was working against you, even when I believed Cassandra's lies, you never gave up on us. You're my family, Marcus. That's what family means. You don't give up, even when things get hard. I want you to know that I understand now. About the money. About keeping your business separate. About all of it. You were protecting us in ways I never realized. I reached over and squeezed his hand. And you protected your children when it mattered most. That's what your father would be proud of. Do you think he would have handled things differently? I think your father would have done exactly what you did, whatever it took to keep his family safe. Claire appeared in the doorway behind us. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Never, I assured her. Family conversations are always better with more family. She smiled at being included in that category, and I meant it. Claire had earned her place at our table through patience, kindness, and genuine love for Marcus and the children. Actually, Marcus said, standing up and taking Claire's hand, there's something we wanted to tell you. I looked at their joined hands and felt my heart skip a beat. We're engaged, Claire said, her face glowing with happiness. Marcus asked me last night. I jumped up and hugged them both, my eyes filling with tears of joy. That's wonderful. When? Next summer, Marcus said. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. We want the kids to be part of it. Emma as maid of honor, Jasper as ring bearer. And we want you to officiate, Claire added. I know you're not ordained or anything, but we thought maybe you could get one of those online minister licenses. The request touched me deeply. I would be honored. As evening fell and it came time for everyone to leave, I stood on my front porch waving goodbye to my family. Emma and Jasper waved from the back seat of Marcus's car, their faces pressed against the windows. Claire waved from the passenger seat, her engagement ring catching the porch light. Marcus honked the horn twice, our family signal for love, you. Inside my house, as I cleaned up the dinner dishes and put away the toys the children had left scattered around, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment. Cassandra had tried to destroy our family by exploiting our love for each other. Instead, she had forced us to fight for that love, to prove it was stronger than fear or greed or manipulation. The house was quiet now, but it was a good quiet. The quiet of a home filled with love and laughter and the promise of more family. Dinners to come. I walked to Harold's portrait on the mantel and smiled. We did it, sweetheart. We kept them safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new reasons to be grateful for the family we'd built and rebuilt and protected. Emma would continue healing, growing stronger every day. Jasper would keep asking questions and getting chocolate on everything. Marcus would plan his wedding and learn to trust love again. And I would be there for all of it, no longer the lonely widow in the big house, but the grandmother at the center of a family that had proven itself unbreakable. Some people might say that money and property don't matter, that family is the only thing that counts. But I'd learned something different. Money and property are tools, powerful tools that can protect the people you love or destroy them, depending on whose hands they're in. I'd chosen to use my tools to build a fortress around my family. And as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs to bed, I knew I'd make the same choice again in a heartbeat. After all, that's what grandmothers do. We protect what matters most by any means necessary. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.